I made a stream earlier today in regards to my discontent with the results of this Senate primary election, and really more so the fact that both of the candidates who actually made it to the general election are what I would consider establishment politicians, and that I was kind of disturbed by the results because I thought the organizational skills of Hartson, the candidate that was backed by the Young Turks, was very good. Although I did critique several missteps I thought her campaign had, I still recognized as an organized effort that had literally hundreds of thousands of people involved with working on it. And, as a person who's for the last couple of years recognized the fatal flaw in American politics, um, that of the American oligarchy, I've really come to become more and more frustrated with each election cycle and just seeing people, in my opinion, vote against their best interests, which are to get representatives who don't serve corporations before them, be they, identifying with the Democrats or Republicans. And, I find myself having to break down, explain repeatedly what I mean when I talk about my third way ideology. And it's conducive to noticing that both parties have a shared system, which is that a majority of their members, there are a few exceptions, mind you, are in the hands of corporations, which consist of a small group of the population that will give them loads and loads of money to run these campaigns to get their name in the paper and on television. Um, and I was, this is oftentimes met by people completely turning their brains off to this fact. Let me respond to. Uh, not at this moment to answer that question, young Link. And also, if I did, why would I announce it on a random screen? Okay, Dwight says, "Hey, I'm gonna say hey back." Um, no, but it disturbs me because I recognize I read more into this stuff than a chunk of my contemporaries. We all have things that make us special, or at least that other people don't do as often as us. It is what it is. And I've always tried to reconcile to myself that people haven't caught on to this system uh, for a number of reasons. One is that the networks are paid off to not talk about certain issues, which is correct. That's why you will never hear CNN or Fox News or MSNBC talk about net neutrality unless it's to bring the chairman, Ajit Pai, on there to lie to you and say that Obama somehow was causing you to lose access to the internet when the regulation Obama put in place. And again, I'm a critic of Obama, so this is I would think this has a little bit more validity. I'm not, trying to give him some fond record, but the truth of the matter about that regulation is that it ensures none of these service providers, which pay out those FCC members to be opposed to the regulation, can mess with your internet. So when he goes on there and he says Obama has a regulation that, restricts your freedom of access, it's disingenuous. Yes, it is a regulation, but it allows people to have freedom of speech online and not be beholden to service providers like an AT&T, like Verizon. So things like that, there are just issues that you're not going to see covered. And it was the same thing with the Senate election. You had 30 candidates in this race, and several of whom were notable. And I can tell you, I think only two of them, maybe, De Leon and Feinstein, obviously were covered multiple times, but everybody else, bar Little, I didn't see on television at all. Just completely, you would think they weren't even running. So then when you get your ballot box and you see all of these names, you're think of yourself as the average um, California voter. You don't know who any of these people are because you're not going online and looking up the alternatives to these two, incremental trashy choices. And what I find so puzzling is that I've tried to reconcile myself because this has been going on for decades, at least since the 80s, that people don't know this because of the fact that you have you know, the internet wasn't available back then in its capacity, but as things are now, where you can look up a person's name if they're a public figure and find out about their positions, and again, if they're a candidate for office, you can figure out who they're getting their money from. This is all public information. We have an open secret when it comes to our bribery in the U.S. and it's astonishing when you sit here and you criticize him, because most of my critiques of Trump, for example, came from the fact that he was doing things that were in line with other corporate politicians, like Obama, like the younger Bush, like Clinton. This includes tax cuts for the rich, just various things that were status quo that just kept going and going no matter what party you put in place. And when you try to explain to people, you're saying this from a standpoint of being pro-American, not pro-Democrat or pro-Republican, they will completely just cut you off. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to accept the idea that, hey, maybe there is some issue of grandiose measure that just goes beyond party. And one of the things I've really come to understand about a large portion of the viewership I had was that it wasn't dedicated to at least some people, not everybody. Obviously, there are those that will pay attention on things that are of substance. This very important problem. It's what causes laws that no one likes, at least the average person has discontent for, to get passed. There's actually a story about a bill that Trump signed that I think had a 6 or 7% approval rating. You had Obama opposing same-sex marriage up until his second term, and the majority of the country was in favor of that. These are views that are not are not politically courageous, but rather corporate centric to appeal to those who are putting cash in their pockets. Well, the Obama thing was really just strategic voting and really sloppy, but whatever. And as I was, taking in the results earlier today, I was thinking long and hard, what needs to be done to get people to wake up to this? What needs to be done to get people to pay attention to what is being said here? I've had my disagreements with the Young Turks repeatedly, but I will always attest to the fact that the majority of those Justice Democrat candidates are coming from a place I can at least back, because I know that whatever position they're taking is not influenced or funneled by the paper they're taking in. And I can't say the same thing for my two current senators or my Congress person. So I hate the fact that people, I don't know what the LOL after that is supposed to mean, Dwight. I hope that is, I mean, you know, well, they've already passed a resolution in my state, so I don't know what else can be done at this point, other than to just ask yourself, what all does it take to get people to because I reconciled with myself a while ago. You're not going to be able to reach every person. There's 39 million people in the state. Only I think 2-3 million voted in this primary yesterday. It's not even doable. That's not even, I think, 20 or 30% of all those who can vote in the state. So you sit here and I've actually seen people do this where they'll not vote for someone because they can't win, which is a very terrible mindset. Because if you're going to like a candidate but not do things to assist them on the premise of them not having support from other people, how can they ever expect their base to grow? I went into the booth yesterday expecting the people I voted for to lose, and I walked out of there content with the fact that I had voted my conscience. That's always my principle. I don't care if the person is polling at 1%, which is what happened with my person, so long as they are on the track of actually being able to do things. As far as I'm concerned, I will back them regardless. Let me say hello to Envoy. But yeah, it's very scary because I tried to talk myself into this morning to saying, okay, well, this is just name recognition and yada yada yada. But I sat here with the person about maybe they started seriously paying attention to this election about 3 weeks ago, and they don't like De Leon. They were talking about they went to back Feinstein. So I told them, Feinstein voted for the tax cuts, Bush's tax cuts that gave money to the rich. She was, pro-Iraq. Uh, just a record that really, other than gun control, and even that's debatable to a lot of people, is very poor. And, this person agreed with me. They said they, nodded their head. Yep, yep, yep. I showed them the ads by that candidate that I told you guys about, the TYT had endorsed that got 2% of the vote. And the response by this person was literally up until I think about 2 or 3 days before the election, still saying, I'm going to vote for Feinstein. Did you not just see anything I just told you? But again, it goes back to this idea that the more you sit here and you try to explain things to people, it's like it almost gets to where you don't want to bother. Um, like we might get to a point where I just say, okay, I'm just going to record this video, and if it gets 2 views, fine. You'll be content with the fact that a person paid attention, because I've tried to say, oh, well, maybe it's just because, or just due to the fact that people aren't into this kind of stuff, but that's the problem. I've really tried to say it's okay for people to not know about elections. It's okay for people to not know about history. It's all right, but I can't allow myself to keep giving the general population the benefit of the doubt for things that it can, if it wants to, become adept at. And this isn't like becoming a doctor. You don't need a PhD to know this stuff. It's widely available, and someone is, such as myself, is willing to break it down, explain piece by piece what the problem is. But if the individuals that are listening do not retain anything nor make any attempts to go back, because it's different if you say to yourself, I didn't really catch much of what he said. Let me replay that, or let me go look this up for myself. If they're not going to make those efforts either, in addition to not hearing it the first time around, what else can you do? And again, I live in a state with 39 million people, with millions registered to vote. And if I sit there and talk with, I don't know, a million people before this election cycle, you have to factor in this idea that people either aren't going to listen to what you have to say, they're going to tune you out, they're not going to retain the information. I even thought for a while we need to just go around and have little like booklets that have all of the candidates' positions in there, and that still was met with no interest, because you keep thinking to yourself, are they going to just use that as a thing in their car? Let me respond to Envoy. You can't force people to be interested, JD, even if it benefits them. Sadly, sad, really. Uh, you can break it down to a sentence: if their minds aren't engaged. To quote one, my favorite wrestler is The Rock. It doesn't matter. Yeah, but to quote Eddie Murphy's father, you get what you gave. So if they don't pay attention to their interests not being reflected in their representatives, they're going to keep getting representatives that don't do anything for them. And it's like I said, this is a very simple thing to solve. Anything that's a numbers game can be fixed if a number of people say to themselves, I'm tired of this, let's fix it. Or at least let's do something different. I might as well just take his name and write on a piece of paper and just have it in the background from now on with that quote in cap locks or something. Put it in 58 what do you call it, font. Okay, that's the greatest trick America has done. But what's the greatest trick? Oh, make the majority of people ignorant. Yeah, but here's the thing. Um, the networks can sit here and they can choose not to cover these stories because they have dirty paper in their pocket. Nowhere can make people just decide for themselves, I'm not going to look this up. I'm not going to question any of this any further. It's the choice of the individuals involved to sit there and say, you know what, I am refusing to go into depth about this. I am not going to pay this any more attention than I already do. And I have when we do Dark Times 4 on Saturday, um, this is one of the topics that will be discussed, and it is with the intent of trying to show that the world and the earth and just the whole system of how society is right now is, if I could rate it from a 1 to a 10, I'd probably give it a 4 or a 5. We've made technological advances, but mentally we have digressed, or rather shrunk in terms of what we pay our attention to and what we just write off as not being important. Okay, so Envoy says, why do you think that is? Do you think people choose not to get involved? What do you think they choose? Why do you think they chose not to choose not to pay attention? Um, Several factors. I think a lot of people who are working 9 to 5s, going to school, that wouldn't be on the internet that much anyway, and actively seeking out information on this stuff, they're going to write it off as, oh, I'll just see what's on TV, and oh, I guess it's those two people. And I can kind of get their perspective a little bit more. They're the guys who you can sway. You can say, hey, this is bad because of X, Y, and Z. If you don't believe me, go to this website, type this in. They're the people that have the open mind because they haven't had the opportunities to just go and sit here and look through positions and figure out why one thing is good and why one thing's bad. But in some instances, you actually have people who, either whether they're Democrat or Republican, they are very partisan in how they view this scenario. Case in point, I've had people who are, longtime Democrats that if you say anything bad about Obama, they will chide you for. And I've seen many Trump supporters who've actually given him a pass for doing things that Obama did. So I say that to tell you that it goes both ways. Um, and that isn't acceptable to me. And I've tried to make that the primary factor when it comes to my third way ideology in terms of having this thing where you're not for either party. It's to say that you don't have this taste for them because they're that party. It's the fact that they represent a certain value that you despise, which is this partisanship for things that both sides do. And that's something that gets in the way of regular people being able to learn this stuff. For people who actively follow this, they get so accustomed to saying, "Oh, the Democrats are the good guys, Republicans are the bad guys," or vice versa. And then you sit them down and say, "No, both sides do an exact same thing," and they don't want to hear it. And as long as that viewpoint keeps going, it's never going to improve, and you're always going to have a solid 20-30% of the vote that is dedicated to um, partisan acceptance of whatever mediocrity their candidate is giving them, whether it's a lack of representation or outright corruption or both. In most cases, it is. You won't get a change. Our voices, the people truly rose up. So many changes can be made. It's been shown through history. Yeah, look, you've had write-in candidates win before. Not that often, obviously, but it's been done. And this thing of needing all this money to run for elections, this is new. It hasn't been around. Go back to 1880. They didn't have loads of money. They couldn't buy you out. Go back to 1960. They couldn't do that. Go back to 1970. Couldn't do it. It only started around the era of Reagan, and then it just kind of trickled down from there. Women rose up with suffragettes and suffragist movements. Yeah, no, I get what I'm. There are people who are invested in this, uh, and with the yeah, that's another example of civil rights. But I'm saying that I'm fully aware there are people who get this. You seem to comprehend it. The problem is that when you're talking to a majority, like for example, I guarantee you the title of this stream alone, I could sit here literally and have had the first 2 minutes be about the oligarchy and just start talking about relationships, and this thing would get almost maybe like 20, 30 views. But then if I make a stream called, "Oh my God, woman said I look like the night man," and talk about that for 2 minutes and then go on about the oligarchy for another 30 or 40, that would get maybe 100 or plus views. And again, it goes back to this thing where we have this incessant need for drama, but only when it's applicable to things that we can personally see ourselves in. A lot of people who tune into those various relationship streams in the past that I've actually kind of found myself being disinterested. I'll mention something here and there, but now it's kind of like whatever. Um, they saw my circumstance as similar to their own. That's why you have the whole relatability thing. And they find a topic like this not necessarily difficult to comprehend, but less solvable, less believable in terms of actually getting a solution to it. And so when they see that title, they go, "Oh man, that's something far just way out in that political stuff." I'm not into that. and they write it off. And when they do that, they allow themselves to accept the idea that so long as a headline does not match your viewpoint, it can stay forgotten, hidden, and thrown out. What's easier to solve, Music Fiend? Uh, Music Fiend says the American oligarchy is the biggest problem in the world today. Yeah, and it's the direct catalyst for other issues we have. You know, the American imperialism, us launching, perfect example. Obama gets a Nobel Peace Prize in his first year in office, then subsequently launches us into five more wars, to where we were in seven during his tenure. Anyone who doesn't believe that can go look it up. I had a list on this monitor over here, but I'll have to pull out. Okay, Envoy says, well, JD, I guess it's the yin and yang of life. I delve in both realms, stuff like and what's going on in the country, and the other realm of and drama among men and women. Look, I'm not saying it's bad. Variety's a spice of life. What I am telling you is that when you have people who literally sit here and their entire aim, purpose, and willingness to pay attention is forwarded towards some form of entertainment or drama, they're the problem because they are allowing the people at the top to get away with screwing them over. Case in point, I was sitting here. Um, I've been talking to a woman, or rather, I spoke with a woman in this. I cut it off this about 2 months ago, and the state she lives in has a progressive running for the U.S. Senate. He's a very good guy. I was very impressed by him. He's been calling out the oligarchy as well, not taking PAC money, just very good. So within a month of my last contact with her, she starts randomly sending me texts, and I respond back to her call the next week because she stops texting me out of nowhere. I say, what did you want? And I mean, it was almost like picture yourself going up to kindergarten students and asking them about their goals in life, and you'll get the same level of and refusal to directly answer the question. I think actually if you went up to first graders, they would by then have more verifiable and quicker answers, and she just danced around it so much, and it was this strange kind of mind warped game. But as she was sitting there and talking with me, or at least as I was attempting to talk to her, and I hung the phone up afterward, in both instances I was thinking to myself, this is a person who, um, in being over 18, like I am and the other people are, can vote and can contribute to in a small way getting rid of these corporate hacks. And yet, if you ask her about the oligarchy, she might think that's some kind of food. And if you try to tell her about the oligarchy, explain it to her, she might sit there in silence. If you try to tell her why both parties are screwed up and she should pay attention to this, she might hang up the phone. So again, you ask yourself, what can you do with people who it feels like the entire intent of them showing any kind of involvement with what you're doing is just to be involved in drama. I could literally make this stream just be about me talking about relationship crap, and after the first 2 minutes of just being the oligarchy, that would get way more views than if I gave you an honest title where I sat there and talked about what the problem was. And this is an ongoing issue, and it sickens me to see music videos and other stuff you throw your head to, and episodes of TV shows that entertainment's fine, but my point is when you sit there and you pay attention to all of these distractions and all of this other stuff that's splattered all over the place, it's doing nothing to solve this problem. And it's been allowed to go on decade after decade because people didn't know about it. And in an era where we can go and have ways of speaking about things plainly and honestly without having to worry about someone funneling dirty cash into your pocket. Imagine one day I'm just doing a stream about how sucky everything is, and then suddenly dirty paper starts falling atop me, and I go, "Oh, I'm not speaking on that anymore." That doesn't happen here. People can talk about things, they can express it, they can air out an issue, and it's wasted. It's it is directed toward drama and other things that are not of substantive value. It's a complete mockery of the fact that you're allowed to have a system where people can communicate with each other, express their opinion, and potentially start up some dialogue that can lead to a long-term effort to solve something. Okay, Music Fiend says a friend of mine always covers his ears when politics is mentioned, but wonders why he has to apply to hundreds of jobs to move out of the house. Yeah, they well, look, my thing has always been that I like to take intake information. Now, there are certain topics I'm not going to look up, whether it's about sports or something else relating to just construction. But if someone were to said, "Hey, I'll sit you down, I'll explain this to you in 2 minutes or shorter," I'm going to listen to them. I don't care what the topic is, because I truly believe that the only way to solve ignorance and complete buffoonery in terms of our own minds or things we don't know about is to sit there and allow someone to speak about it, whether it's an hour long, which most of us don't want to do, or it's an abridged version. It doesn't seem too impractical to say to yourself, I'll hear him out for these next 3 minutes. That's when a lot of people, they, if they're not working their 9 to 5 job, they're over there going, for, several hours a day anyway. Also, I'd appreciate it if the 4 people here give me some likes, but it is what it is. I expect at least Envoy to do it. That's the veteran. So we'll see what happens. I appreciate the 2 people who did that. I have no way of knowing who you are, but thank you. And the other person. And the one person who's watching that apparently can't do it. I don't know, all kind of strange stuff goes on now. But yeah, I really sat here for about an hour just debating strategies. One was just, do we have to knock on everybody's door? Do we have to announce we're running for something for 2, 3 years in advance to get our name out there? What needs to be conducted to cause people to pay attention to things? And you can levy your critiques toward the more national progressive. So like they were saying, why didn't Bernie come out to California and endorse this one woman? And then why didn't Warren from Massachusetts, why didn't she come out here? And they those are logical, valid arguments to make, but those 2 people can't be everywhere. Um, and when you have certain individuals who are not known, there are ways you have to go about doing that, whether it's knocking on doors or being involved with the community, and it is harder in a state like mine with millions of people. Say hello to CP, who is trying to be the 11th hour ranger. I don't know if CP knows about the oligarchy. We'll find out. Can read what Music Fiend says. The only way to really do this is with propaganda, and you know how that could be flipped for the worse, but it's still worth the try. Um, Now, define what you mean by propaganda. I'd like to for you to go further into that. But it's just aggravating, and it's kind of funny to sit here and actively have content about stuff that I guess the way I could chalk it up to is when you feel certain issues will never get fixed, whether it's something personal like the relationship nonsense, or something on an international level like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, their lack of peace settlement. You become more willing to just go out and say, yeah, this sucks, this is lame, this is terrible, and you give your reasons for why. Um, and you say to yourself, well, what's the point of talking about this? This stream will change it, but to at least try to raise awareness of it, even if it's only 2 or 3 people checking it out, I feel is something worth doing or attempting. And again, I wouldn't use tricky titles sometimes. I didn't have to. If I wasn't concerned about the little headline thing people like to do, where they won't even try to check it. I'll just say, "What's the title? Is that relating to politics?" Or skip. So any form of media with a larger political narrative. Yeah. Let me see if I'm getting what you're saying correctly. Um, there was a movie that came out about, I think, last month, month before last, and it was about Obama's last year in office. You know, I call it a propaganda film because it painted him as this courageous leader that was trying to save everything and was so disaffected by the weaponry that was dropped in Laos, and just all of that stuff to make you feel him. It's like that Mitt film that came out after the 2012 election. But in seeing that, the people that I watched it with, they were convinced. Oh, what a great leader! What a charismatic, compassionate figure. Um, and I couldn't buy it because you said to yourself, they get all this access, these people behind the scenes. Would they allow this if it wasn't going to be for something positive? I don't get it. So propaganda could be good. The word itself has negative connotations because it's mostly used to note how horrible movements capitalize on the general public. Propaganda for the proper goose. Uh, I think your ex-wife made that one on board. So I'm gonna have to. She's gonna come after you for libel for stealing her quote and claiming it as your own. I can't take a Shakespeare play and write my name on the front page and say it was a production of mine. So you're going to be facing her down in some courthouse at some point or another. But yeah, I think I get what you're saying. Music theme. I just really hate the fact that you have two terrible choices this November, um, and people, just going on Twitter after the election results were in, people really were trying to make the case for, oh no, this isn't so bad. Just vote for this one person over the other. And I sat here and I said, look, don't ask me to play the game of, garbage versus disposable waste. I had to do the same thing back in the presidential elections last time around. I didn't go for either one of them. Just pick the third party guy, Johnson, who had his own problems. But again, I was not backing either major party candidate. So it's funny to sit here and say to yourself, well, if you look at De Leon's record, the only thing that's really, which is the guy who's up against Feinstein in the general election, the only thing he has going for him is he said, I'm going to back Medicare for all, which is a very generic statement. And other than that, I don't see what's different about him from Feinstein, um, other than his age and his gender. But again, they like to trick you, like they go, oh, see, this person's, he's not the same because, he did this. No, he didn't do anything. He just sat in office for 2 years and forced a vote. I think it was single payer where it was designed to. This is how ridiculous people are. He thought I was so dumb. This is again back to this media thing. If you force a vote on something knowing it's going to not pass, that's supposed to make me respect you, which is what he did with I believe it was single payer for all, or just single payer rather, healthcare. Knowing it was going to flop, you still put it in there anyway. So I was not impressed. Now, as for beating the oligarchy, a mixture of really good international journalism, countries being able to operate freely without intervention from bigger threats. Um, I just think we need to one day have a large, massive wave of people running against these incumbents, no matter what state they're in, and selling the narrative of yeah, you might not agree with me on this one thing or another, but I am not corrupt, and maybe mixing in coverage on just there's a way of doing this. I keep sitting here trying to debate what to fully compose it with. I really thought that if you win in a bigger state like mine, it would trickle down to smaller areas. You win in California. Oh, that means we can win in I don't know, South Dakota, that kind of thing. Which I mean, that's a red state of if I don't know what. I think they haven't had a Democrat as governor since the '70s. It is just been Republican, 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 Republican. They will not subside. It is an astonishing feat. Cut the funding for the oligarchs and redistribute it to the poor, and be principled. Yeah, look, I have no problem backing someone that is anti-gun control or you know anti-abortion, so long as they're not taking PAC money. And the reason for that is because when you have people who are not, and also let me just clarify, that wouldn't be my first choice anyway, but they would, I would think they're more likely to be genuine in their belief system than someone who I know is, bending over for, dirty pieces of paper with Andrew Jackson or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln's face on it. And I just wish that more people would understand this. But like I said, the biggest thing that got me down, earlier today and kind of last night, was in trying to sit people down and say, hey, this is the problem with this person's problem with this person, and they just won't. They will either not listen to it, or if they listen to it, it goes in one ear out the other, or they try to argue against it. Oh well, they're all taking money. No, they're not. I can't believe you'd be met with and what gets me is that a lot of times these people I have familiarity with, you talk to a an associate, an acquaintance at school, just different places you can go and meet people, and they'll know. I don't want to say your expertise, but they know you have more familiarity with this stuff than they do. And look, I'm not saying that means you can have a difference of opinion, but if you're going to sit there and tell me your entire opinion is based off of, some dumb ad you saw on TV versus the facts of who this person, takes their funding from, as well as who they vote for, what else can I do? Okay, the music fiend says South Dakota must be pretty red, but it can switch their neighbors' lead by example, and had progressives taken over the Democratic primary. No, look, I think that in most states, if you just get someone who runs on the message of, hey, they're screwing you over with these corporate tax cuts, versus other things, in there as well. So depending on what state you're in, you can do well at the very least the first time around. Alabama was a very rare exception because you were met with a man who was accused of the most outrageous of things, and he, actually did put up a good case for why it wasn't him. But nonetheless, that was an example of the establishment being able to pull an okey doke on the population, and then, fast forward, what is this, 6 months later, and what's the Democrat doing? He's voting with Republicans. He's backing conservatives. He is literally everything you would have had from that, from Moore, the Republican in Alabama, minus the controversy. It's like that. This is part of what I'm talking about. You don't get change. Moore would have voted for all of the same people, and all of these things that are, Republican leaning, and not actually had coverage for it because it's what he's supposed to do. But Jones, the Democrat who won that election, is doing that, thinking, oh, if I just act like the Republicans, they'll want me in for another 6 years and 2 years. I'll have 8 more years. Yeah, keep believing that one. Why would I pick Republican light when I can get actual Republican? Why would I pick Diet Coke when I can get Coke? I mean, come on. So it was funny. They want to talk about Democrat in name only. That's a pitch perfect example right there. That's how patriotism, where people will die for all the wrongdoings of this country. America. Americans have always been easy to sway. Yeah, just like with this, if you remember the video I did about the Syrian airstrike and how that exposes my stupidity, I was mocking the fact that I, the person who knew I was politically, active or more into reading about this stuff, and they reacted entirely off of emotion and applauding Trump having the missile in Syria, and completely ignored the idea of us starting a war with that country. The fact that we had no proof that they were behind the chemical attack, just a complete refusal to do anything but just be based in emotion and whatever makes you feel good, versus what the ramifications are of just attacking someone that's done nothing to us. Okay, this uber pragmatism by a lot of lefties is what's killing them. Get a real lefty, not a neo-lib. No, I agree. They keep playing these tricks. It's not going to work for them. Envoy says buzzwords and catchphrases can get politicians so far. Make America great again. Ring a bell. What does that mean? Who cares? All it sounds good. That's the response by many Americans. America needs you. America needs who? I hope you're not talking about me. I'd be flattered if you were, but I need you to clarify that. Are you talking about your ex-wife? She's one of the people that America is so desperately looking for. But yeah, again, this is another problem we have, that when you sit here and you actually try to talk to people about these things, they don't feel the need to pay it any attention. They go off of what they feel in their heart versus what is true. All these people that voted for Obama both times, I told them about him getting us in 5 more wars and getting the Nobel Peace Prize, um, also keeping wealth inequality purposely, as well as the surveillance state of allowing with the Patriot Act the government can spy on wiretap. These are all things that he did that a lot of his backers I've seen and personally talked with oppose. And yet, for some reason, they can't bring themselves to say this was not a great president. This was not a good president. This was a mediocre at best, awful at worst president, just like the one that came right before him and the one that's come after him. And they refuse to sit there and condemn something that they know themselves as a person who's not bought out, they wouldn't do. And so, I keep trying to explain to them, you had this tomcat who gets a piece of paper in the Nobel Peace Prize for, being of multi-racial, background, and supposedly, promoting peace through his work before, and then goes into all of these different conflicts that, in some cases we're still reaping the consequences of. Probably with all of them, I haven't just gone and fact checked, but you get the point. And again, what they love to do, what I've seen with a lot of these people who don't want to accept my third way ideology, is they'll sit here and they do a verbal filibuster. They'll seize on one comment you made and then just steamroll through that, and then you don't even feel like talking to them anymore. We're so right that our left is righter than Britain's right, Theresa May, and that's wild. It very much is. Milton Friedman is the libertarian Jesus. Taught the neoliberal policies of Chile, and Chile had Pinochet, or Pinochet, how do you say it? And that's considered our left. Yeah, for whatever reason, it is just truly insane. So yeah, these are all things that were surging through my mind, and in having that frustration, I really, I guess it goes back to what a lot of the and this is why I tend to start linking these topics together. When I talk about stuff with relationships, when I talk about stuff with any other topic, more often than not, that's not on the level of just, oh, I like this show, I like that show. It feels as if anything that you discuss in this current day and age, in the perspective of my problem with this is yada yada yada. You have people who are not fully educated nor take the time to sit there and actually look into the grander scope of a position, and they'll write you off on some premise that's designed to neutralize the truth behind whatever claim you make. So, for example, a lot of times in those comment sections of the relationship videos, what you'll see, as far as the detractors are concerned, are people who will say, you're not with someone because you only like people of this ethnicity and they've all turned you down. And if you stopped approaching people of this ethnicity, then things would be different, even though I've said before, it's been all over the place, but, with a preference for my own group, but that whatever. Another example is they'll say, "Oh, it's not working because you're online, even though we did it in person, it didn't work." And then if you say, "I've done this 40 times, it's not going to work," they'll call you negative. When in reality, you're being pragmatic and saying, "Look, if it didn't work the first 50 times you did it online and in person, why would it be different now?" That's a pragmatic position, but they won't concede that. And just like when I sit here and talk about how crappy these parties are, I'll mention things that both are doing. Both are pro-war, both are pro-corporation by and large. Yes, there are a few individuals in at least one. I don't know about the Republican. I really don't. I have to sit there and check, but I know there are multiple politicians currently holding office who aren't this way. And what you start seeing is people will say, "Oh, you're saying this about this party because of yada yada yada." If you go back to my Trump State of the Union response, you have people who accused me of being a Democrat who hated Trump for gutting welfare, even though I've never been on it, because I was smart enough to, not have children I can't take care of. But that's another story. And accusing me of, having this partisan view that is askew to whatever position, and they're doing that because they want themselves to believe, oh, the reason this person doesn't like Trump is because he's opposite of their ideology. When in reality, that's only partially true. Um, Trump is opposite of my ideology, as well as the president before him, as well as the president before that. And they don't want to accept the idea that their boy is a corporate sellout, just like the guy he was campaigning against that was retiring after 2 terms. So it scares them. They have to come up with some fridge reason for why a problem is the way it is. And a lot of times you respond back to these people, they run. They don't say anything back. The woman who writes 2, 3 paragraphs talking about my negativity is what causes, my circumstance, you respond back to it with logic, facts, and reason, she disappears. The guy that goes on here talking about, oh, this free college could never work, even though we spend billions of dollars on these wars that only put people in body bags. So we do have money. They write that comment. You type something back with logic, facts, and reason, disappear. And the worst case scenario is when the person can't concede anything. I can concede I won't try certain things federally until doing it at the state level. Because I think it would be much easier to try it there and then see if you can get the same model across the U.S. or adapt it to that. They just hush themselves. They don't want to say, yeah, let's at least give it an attempt there. Let me at least be open to that, because they know that if that gets done at the state level and it works, and go, oh my God, this might work at a higher level, we have to shut this down, because they're a partisan hack. They don't have positions that are designed to do much of anything other than be in the way of people who actually want to solve the problems of the U.S. When we get into Dark Times 4, which is, it's going to have some original stuff in there on Saturday. I intend for it to be on Saturday. You are going to see that my ideology is one of addressing problems relating to human behavior, at least American behavior, um, and how it has directly contributed to the oligarchy and other internal issues that the country can solve through enough of its people saying enough is enough, and how they have chose to, and by and large, there are many people who don't follow the same belief system, to sit on their hands, and when helped or instructed, they turn a deaf ear to the voices of peace and reason. Okay, Music Fiend says California alone could fund free college for the entirety of West Coast and still have money left over. California's economy dwarfs most countries on the planet. Exactly. Oh, the envoy said something about alcohol prohibition. I think I'll give it's a way more open in being people from, but it's corruption in so many other ways. I don't even know why. I don't even know if it's covert. It's not covert at all. It's open bribery. Mm. I think people also think they can't combat the machine, which is why they don't bother. They don't bother to try. Yeah, well, again, envoy. The thing is, they want you to fall in line. They want you to say to yourself, "There's no way we can do this. We're screwed. We're doomed." Yada yada yada. When in fact, think about this: a state of 39 million people. If every single one of those people gave $1, for example, which won't happen, but let's okay. You know what? Let's cut it back. If 20 million people all gave $1, that's 20 million bucks. Everybody gets $5. That is what, $1 billion or 100 million, whatever, however you factor it in. That's enough to take on a machine of corporate politicians. Um, Small contributions can fight, but the other thing is that no matter how big those contributions are for those wealthy individuals, which is oftentimes what when it comes down to it, the RNC and DNC, you still can have people who go door to door and get out the vote. That's something that money can't do. The cash can't turn into a volunteer. And yet somehow we have a person who literally had basically no one volunteer for her become, receive 1 million votes in this last Senate election. How? Who, who are these people? People don't think they can do things until someone rephrased the question with a determined look on his face. Remember, us humans are pretty tribal. Well, yeah, that's why we talk about I'm voting for this person because I think they're gonna win, instead of I'm voting for this person because I think they're the most qualified slash the best. A lot of us look for leader, no matter how good the leader actually is. Yeah, I understand that, but I'm starting to get to a point where we're probably going to just have because there are a few issues I haven't reconciled to myself. I've not said to myself can't be fixed. I've always said that the relationship thing could be fixed if women, for example, stopped having these ridiculously high standards. But I know that's not going to happen. I know that rationale and understanding and comprehension, a desire to build something, is not going to arise from any of my female contemporaries toward me and some other males in our lifetime. It's just that's how it is. But when it comes to the oligarchy, you can do this in smaller states, and it can be done in larger ones. You just need to have the right system in place, organizational staff, and the amount of time needed to get around the place and actually just be in everybody's ear. This is something that has been done before. Bernie did it. Warren did it. This is Rokana did it. Gabbard did it. It's something that we've seen push through. And what saddened me about a lot of these candidates for the Justice Democrats, especially the Senate ones, like the one in West Virginia, is that after losing, they disappear for a while, or if they say something, it's just a tweet, and I think that's the wrong way to go. For example, with the West Virginia one, she's been touted as someone that might run in 2 years. And I don't know why she doesn't just say, I'm going to run in 2 years. And this is going to be my platform. I'm going to go and knock on every single door. I have more name recognition. Let's start. That's what I would do. If I have two elections that are 2 years apart, I'm getting started as soon as I can because I know that I need to make use of the time and try to acquire the funds needed to sustain a fighting chance against a system of people who are unpopular except with a small group that has large amounts of cash that they have stolen from individuals at the bottom. It's very simple to do, and I hate the fact that people I think are smart and have the strength to get this stuff passed just won't do it. I know it sucks to lose. I know it sucks to sit there and spend a year working on something to get not there, or to only have 2% of the vote as Hartson did last night. But you have to look at the bigger picture and say to yourself, you know what? I got this much this time. Next time we're going to get further. That's just how it is. A lot of politicians that become successful don't win their first time. I don't know why they don't just adopt the Lincoln mindset. You lose 8 elections, then you give up. I don't understand. So I hope this has been somewhat optimistic. I think it can be done. We just have to figure out what steps need to be taken to cause people to wake up. And like I said, the bigger problem we have on online is that you have people who are not willing to participate. Comment. What was the comment? Uh, oh, okay. Let me read it. Okay, Homeboy says, true, it's ironic that so many people get up in arms about guns. The second one was to protect against tyranny, but yet we allow the government to walk all over us, and there are many people who are pro-gun, LOL. Yeah, I don't understand it either. I mean, first of all, the Second Amendment was written when we didn't have a problem of mass shootings and other, you know, ways of carnage by firearms, but also if you really believed it was so important, or rather that fighting tyranny was bad, why are you opposed to getting rid of these corporate candidates? Both are supporting the surveillance state. Both can, track you by your phone and wiretap it. That's tyranny. Why aren't you fighting against that? Whatever. That just it's all hogwash. And also those guns won't protect you from a tank or a missile. But again, they can live in their fantasy. Okay, the music fiend says it's funny. I'm talking all this mess and I'm still a registered independent. Damn. Uh, well, it is what it is. We all have our switching affiliations. But to give a final address to the problem here, I truly believe this can be fixed. And like I said, I have been disappointed with human behavior, just for years. It's mostly been the women I've approached, but it's been people that I've thought of highly, and in being let down by them, it's become much more easier for me to just sit there and say, okay, we know what this person I've spoken with for 5, 7 months, forget you. And I don't enjoy doing that, but it's to be pragmatic and say I didn't expect you to be better because you didn't want to be better. And we can expect the U.S. to get better if people come out in bigger droves and rally around the common purpose of saying, no, I'm sick of the dirty paper that's being thrown into the pocket of this politician. Let's see a change to that. Okay, Envoy says Americans love the sound of their own voice. I remember hearing that quote from Metal Gear Solid 2. Uh, yeah, it's just like that. But I really want to know what What is it going to take? Does someone just need to go on, like CP said earlier, the Jehovah's Witnesses go on people's doors and start banging? Hey, I want to tell you about the oligarchy. What else? What can be done to fix this? You know, I'm optimistic, but I'm also pragmatic, and it's going to take a grassroots effort that it's like if you live in a state like California, for example, 39 million people, you're going to need one person to do maybe 200,000 people or a million people just by themselves and canvass a city in months. Convoy said, I think it takes something like 9/11 happening to get a catastrophe to galvanize the people. We already had that. It was the subprime mortgage crisis with all the homes being foreclosed. That was a disaster. So I don't know what else can cause people to. I mean, people are saying Trump's election is a referendum on the system, but you need to go beyond that because Trump will be gone in 6 years after he wins his second term. Uh, but you're not going to get a change to this at that time. The Democrats are going to run somebody else that's a corporatist, and the Republicans are going to keep that same cycle going. And you're going to have people who call themselves being part of one party or the other who are going to ignore the faults of one to advance the cause of their own. And that is exactly what I keep trying to instruct you to not rally in support of. Envoy says if he wins a second time, what does that say about the people? It says that they are not willing to pay attention to all the ways in which the United States is being destroyed by a system that has been going on for the last 20 years of corporate interest and warmongering and getting your nose stuck into every single foreign initiative known to man and allowing half your population to be poor. I want to make that plain. Literally, half of Americans can't afford a $1,000 emergency, and they will tell you that this is a prosperous system. Obama did a great job. Wonderful, terrific, A plus, and nothing could be further from the truth. We truly didn't know our power. Uh, we truly don't know our power, brother. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, again, I'm aware, of my own ability to influence democracy, but if people in mass numbers don't feel that way, nothing else you can do. You can go to every school in the country. You can get as many people registered as you want, but if they're not going to sit there and actively say to themselves, "I am sick of this. I'm tired of it. Let it go. Leave me alone." These tell the corporate politicians that. What else can you do to cause them to see the issue here, other than get sick of it and talk about it in the stream for an hour? We had a progressive in our Democratic primary and they lost. What Democratic primary are you referring to? Which is why I think something like 9/11 can rally the people up. Well, I still think that if the subprime mortgage crisis, all these homes getting foreclosed, didn't rally them up, I don't know what will. Oh, New Jersey, yeah, yeah, same thing in California. It doesn't fix or change. And that's not because it couldn't. It's because people need to get pushed on a massive level. And look, I hope McCormick runs again against Menendez. That is a corrupt person. I don't wish it happens, but when national security is threatened, then it appears like Americans give a crap. Bob Menendez accepts. Look, I know about the hells of Menendez, so I don't need a history lesson, man. I've watched his career. It's terrible. Um, but I hope she runs again. I hope all the people who've lost this first time give it a second try. What possibly you know could cause them to say to themselves, I'm not going to build on what I've already established. The first time is always the most difficult. That's been said for first day of school, first year in the Senate, just anything. It's the most troubling. I find it hard to register back as a Democrat with the acts of the DNC. Yeah, they're terrible too. But look, I don't think third party way is to go. I think keeping our ideology and our views and voting as a block and saying no, we're not doing this anymore, is the best way to go. And getting people to stop focusing on trivial stuff like Trump's affairs and tweets and the rest of this nonsense is another proper route, and that's something the Democrats haven't picked up on. That's why they're going to get stomped, in subsequent elections. So I've really been disgusted by their behavior. Uh, I just hope that we can someday see a change to this. I think if we work at it, it can get fixed. I'm going to try to figure out some more reasons of ways of addressing this, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And like I said, I don't care if every day I just have to do a stream about this because I'm sick of it. And it feels like it's something that only a small group of people is going to pay attention to. And if that's the case, I'm going to make it the forefront of the channel's efforts. It's more important than some woman being stupid and not, um, you know, acting rationally in any scenario. It's more important than uh, some sex scandal. It's just it's something that is afflicting and destroying the lives of millions of people every day, um, and it seems like only tens of thousands are privy to it. When you sit those other groups down, they don't listen. So we'll find some way of engagement. I'll try something. We'll see. So thank you. One small step at a time. So thank you.